Welcome back to another Pirkei Avot text explication with me, your host, Rabbi Drew. We are now on the fourth text in the fifth chapter, and just as we have seen with the first three texts, these stand apart from what we have experienced in the first four chapters. It starts off with the number 10, talking about something biblical, and there's no named sage attached to it. It has three components, and all talking about the number 10. It starts off, Asar nisim na'asu la'avotenu b'mitzrayim va'asara al hayam. 10 miracles were wrought for our ancestors in Egypt, and 10 at the sea. We get two things about 10. 10 miracles for our ancestors in Egypt, and then 10 more at the sea. It's fascinating because the miracle at the sea, the splitting of the sea, is a huge miracle for our ancestors, for our people, and that's huge. And yet, not happy with that, as it were. Not content, that's the word. Not content with just leaving there being that huge miracle at the sea. This statement says not only was there the miracle at the sea, actually it wasn't one, it was 10. And not only that, there had been 10 previously in Egypt. But it goes on. Eser makot heviha kadosh baruch hu al ha-mitzrim b'mitzrayim ve'eser al hayam. And guess what? 10 plagues did the Holy One, blessed be He, bring upon the Egyptians in Egypt, and 10 more at the sea. Wow. So this works pretty parallel with the first part that we saw, that there are 10 miracles for our ancestors in Egypt, but also 10 plagues in Egypt from God, and then 10 miracles for our people at the sea, and then 10 plagues against the Egyptians at the sea. And then finally, we get the number 10 again. Asar nisyonot nisu avosenu et hamakom baruchu b'midbar shne'amar vayinsu oti zeh sir pa'amim v'lo shamu b'koli. With 10 trials did our ancestors try God. Blessed be He, as it is said from the book of Numbers chapter 14. And they have tried me these 10 times, and they have not listened to my voice. So now here, this is straight out of a biblical verse in the book of Numbers, that God says they tried me 10 times, they didn't listen to me, and so 10 trials did our ancestors try God. And this is kind of the inverse of what we experienced in the previous text, in which it was stated that Abraham was tested with 10 trials, but here, so that was Abraham being tested 10 trials, and here it's our ancestors testing God 10 times. So clearly the number 10 is throughout. This is consistent what we have experienced with the first three texts in this chapter, in which the number 10 is huge. There's no named sage attached to it, and it's all about biblical stuff. But also, it's fascinating because this last piece about our 10 trials our ancestors tested God, okay, that's nice. I mean, it says it right there in the book of Numbers, which is no particular novelty. But the first part, I should say the first two parts, are quite novel. And it's one thing to say that the splitting of the sea is a huge miracle, huge plague, as it were. And obviously we know that there were 10 plagues, right? We know, reading the biblical story, we read the book of Exodus, and we see that there were 10 plagues in Egypt. That's wonderful. Now I wonder what these 10 miracles that were wrought for our ancestors in Egypt that we started this text with, was that sort of the converse or the inverse, as it were. Because if we think about these 10 miracles for our ancestors both in Egypt, and then 10 further ones at the sea, but then we see 10 plagues in Egypt and 10 further at the sea for the Egyptians, does that mean that they relate? Are they related, or are they totally unrelated? And 10 is really just the primary number here. Because if we are to correspond these 10 to each other, we do know, reading the book of Exodus, that there were 10 plagues against the Egyptians in Egypt. So, okay, 10 plagues, great. So maybe that's what those 10 miracles were for our ancestors in Egypt. Now, of course, 10 at the sea, that's a little unclear. I mean, the sea splitting is huge, so I'm not exactly sure what this text is really going for 10 plagues at the sea, although I suspect if that's the case, then maybe that corresponds to these 10 miracles for our ancestors at the sea. All right, so that's what I've got. More further 10s here in chapter 5 about biblical stuff, and thank you again so much for watching, and stay tuned for another one.